Hello and welcome back to the Godot community. I am Jody Ann Henry and I am the PLC moderator for Middle School Theater. For today's webinars, I will be discussing various grant opportunities and ways that you can budget for the school year effectively, whether or not you have a lot of resources or very little. So, arts on a limited budget. Here are some things to consider when you are creating the budget for the school year. You might want to think about what's the inventory that you already have. So, looking around your classroom, looking around your stage space, your auditorium, and figuring out what are the things that you already have. Then decide what exactly do you need? What are the most important things when it comes to your classroom instruction? What are important things that you need to put on a production? Then you want to consider how much might these things cost that you need, and then figure out how much money is available within your school, and then begin your search for other grants or money that might be available in the community and through other organizations and programs. So let's take a look on the things that you might need. Think about the class projects and the things that you'll need for your classroom instruction. So these things may be art supplies. You may need storage space, so things to store. This could be from costumes to these art supplies that you purchase. Where are you gonna store your students' projects? So what does your storage space look like? You're gonna also think about class decorations, performances. What are those needs for those performances? You may need costumes and props and set pieces, and also the equipment that you may use for the performances. So whether that's a soundboard, a light board, things of that nature. So you'd want to consider those projects and those performances when making a list of things that you need. And these are just some suggestions. You may need more elaborate supplies, and you might need less. So here's just a few things that I've gathered, and this is my suggested list. You may need a Bluetooth speaker. I usually use this for rehearsals. I use these for productions, and this is where I can easily connect my phone or a tablet to the speaker to play music. So if we're choreographing a dance or using it for sound effects in a production, it's always useful. And it's portable, so I can use it in the classroom or move it to a larger space if we're doing dance rehearsals, or I can also use it in the auditorium. Stools, maybe 2 or 4 of these. These can come in very handy. These could be extra seats for your students in the classroom, and these can also be used during rehearsal. And this is really good, especially if you don't have rehearsal blocks. If you do have rehearsal blocks, you can use these for your scene work or even for the show or shows that you do. And especially if you do not have access to the materials needed to build large set pieces, these rehearsal blocks are very flexible and can be used as a multi-purpose. You may also want to consider rugs or mats, especially if your classroom is not carpeted. So if you're having students do a lot of movement or warm-up exercises or floor work, the carpet or these rugs can be placed on the floor to prevent students from rolling around on the dirty classroom floor. You may think of getting posters of Broadway musicals or plays, and this can be used as classroom decor or just for reference as you go through the semester to teach and encourage students to watch and to read more plays. You may also think to add large boxes as a means of storage, and you can also have large boxes of various costume pieces. And this can be used during improv scenes, or these can just be storage of the costumes that you have for your shows. In these boxes, you can have hats, gloves, towels, wigs, various things that are needed. And this, as I said before, this can become very handy if you're doing improv or doing any type of acting exercise where the kids can pull items from the boxes and use them in their scenes or their improv performances. You may also want to consider having a reading corner. So, an area where you have your books and scripts and magazines. So, students can use this as a great resource when they're looking for monologues or scenes for their different performance assignments. I would also suggest adding a rubber ball or small ball to your list of items for your class. And this has become something that I use, and it's very handy, especially when I'm doing various theater games. So it's really fun to have it. You can use it for several things. You can even use this ball, for example, you're having a class discussion and you can pass the ball around to the student that needs to speak or contribute to the conversation in class. And you can use it again for several other games. You may consider adding a laptop or a tablet or an iPad if that's affordable for you. And of course, this could be something that the class uses. You can also add a sewing machine to your list. This becomes very handy, especially if you have students that do have those skills. And this also can be used to quickly make any adjustments to costumes, or if you have the resources to actually make costumes, having a sewing machine is great. You can also add other tools, so screwdrivers and nail guns, and so on and so forth. The handheld ones that you can use to make small things or to build props or to make adjustments as needed. All right, as I mentioned, art supplies. So these are just some of the art supplies that you may use when creating or have the students use for different projects. So construction paper becomes very handy, and this is whether or not you're doing like a set design project or they're learning how to costume design and they have to sketch different costumes. So construction paper is very great to add to your list. Having a class supply of glue, this could be glue sticks or the bottled glue. I usually buy the large bottle and then I can refill the smaller ones that the students can use. And I try to have enough of the glue stick for each student in my class so they're not having to share materials. You may consider adding color pencils or markers to your list, having a good supply of glue guns, and having the glue sticks for the glue gun, having a class supply of scissors, plenty of tape, and I've also added paint. So this can be used when the students are doing set design projects or whenever they're making costumes from different recyclable materials, and they can use the paint and mix the paint to change the color of the costumes if they're not able to have the trash bag or have the cloth of the color. Sometimes they use paint. Um, I can also use this paint when we're doing our set design to paint the flats. So these are just a suggested list of art supplies that you'd want to have on your list that you can use for several different projects. Again, storage is something that you definitely want to consider. And a lot of us have class in different spaces. You may be in the auditorium, you may have a smaller classroom space, you might have a larger classroom space, but you'll definitely need to figure out what your storage looks like. And you can use large bins as pictured. You can possibly have racks. You can have a portable closet that you may be able to store in a section of your room that you can store your costumes. And that is what I use because the storage rooms in the auditorium are not available for my use. So I use portable closets and a lot of bins to store my costumes and props in. If you don't have large bins, you can use cardboard boxes, and these are available at your local Walmart, and sometimes they could be donated. You may use filing cabinets. You can use this to store a lot of your students' works or papers or handouts that you may need. I also use these filing cabinets and these bins to store students' work. So I have a bin very similar to these that are in this picture, and I'll have one for each of my class periods, and I store students' work in those bins whenever I'm done grading. Or sometimes I'll have the students submit their classwork that needs to be graded in a particular bin or folder. And the other thing you may think about is having a bookshelf. And this could be a small bookshelf, a large bookshelf, or you can use a filing cabinet to store the books, the scripts that your students may use. Other things to consider when you are creating your list for the year. You want to think about your production materials. And these are things that you need to build a set. And this could be things as elaborate as flats and rehearsal blocks, or it could be the stools that I mentioned earlier. You want to think about costumes. So consider the shows that you may be producing for the fall and the winter semester, and what are your costume needs. Think about if they're costumes that you can recycle or costumes that you can get from a local Goodwill or Salvation Army, or these are things that can be donated by students and other members of the community or within your school. You want to think about the props that are needed. These may be things that you can have your students build. So I have my students work on a prop project as a part of the tech unit, technical theater unit. So some of those props I have my students build, and some of them I may need to purchase. So you can decipher where you may get those props from, and you can add them to your list as something that you need to purchase or something that you can build. You may also want to think about light board. Some schools already have a light board, some schools don't. So whether or not your school may already have them, if you need one and how you can use it. If you have lighting fixtures in your auditorium space, what are the ones that are working and are not working, and do they need to be replaced? You may also want to think about a soundboard. If you have a soundboard, if you have a microphone, if you don't, what may be the cost of this? You may also want to think about a speaker. Do you have a portable speaker? Do you need one? And as I mentioned earlier, microphones. So just go through and think of the things that you need, the things that you already have. Make sure you have a detailed inventory of these items, and then we can begin to look at your budget and what are the resources that are out there so you can get the things that you need for your class or you'd like for your class to provide quality instruction to your students and put on a production at your school that both you and your students will enjoy.